Can everybody hear me clearly?
5 by 5.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Is everybody ready? This is the 2-minute warning. Good afternoon, everyone. I hereby call this meeting of the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission to order. This meeting is being recorded as well as streamed live for the public. Due to her prior employment at the National Transportation Safety Board and the Commission's plan to review an NTSB report at our meeting this afternoon, Ms. Silbaugh is recusing from our meeting today. Mr. Smith, do we have a quorum today?
Sorry, yes, Chair Hart, we do have a quorum. Sorry, I was trying to see if I was on mute or not. Chair Hart, you are here, Commissioner Lobby is here, Commissioner Farrar Dyke, Commissioner Bob, Commissioner Rouse, and Commissioner Conklin are all present. And I believe we have alternate Commissioner Higgins on too.
And just as a matter of clarification, Chair Hart, General Counsel Silbaugh is recused from certain elements of today's meeting, particularly elements that pertain to her work while she was employed at the National Transportation Safety Board, not the entire meeting. So you may see her later in the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Meyer, for that clarification. I appreciate that. And thank you, Mr. Smith, for the quorum count. Now we will turn to our safety message from Emergency Management Specialist Richard David. Mr. David.
Thank you, Chair Hart. In these winter months, take steps to prevent carbon monoxide exposure and poisoning. The CDC recommends that you make sure heating systems, water heaters, and any other gas, oil, or coal-burning appliances are serviced every year by a qualified technician. Never use generator or gas-powered engines inside or near a window, door, or vent. Do not keep a car or truck running inside a garage that is attached to your home. Be sure you have a working carbon monoxide detector and replace the batteries regularly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. David. We will now move on to the minutes from our previous meeting. Secretary Treasurer Farrar, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good afternoon. The minutes of December 12th, 2023 meeting were posted for review. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? If not, I move approval of the December 12th minutes as circulated. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Bob has seconded the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay.
Yay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Chair Hart, the vote is 6-0 and the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Next on the agenda, we provide an opportunity for public comments at each of our meetings. To ensure that we recognize all who wish to speak, we provided an opportunity for those who have joined the Zoom meeting to sign up in the chat box. If you wish to speak but did not sign in, please do so now. But also remind everyone, including those of you who are watching on YouTube, that you can always report any safety concerns through our website, WMSC.gov, through our social media channels or by email. Ms. Minor, do we have anyone who has indicated that they would like to speak today?
No, Chair Hart, there are no names in the chat.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Minor. We will now continue with the next agenda item, which is my remarks. Our meeting today includes updates on the WMSC's ongoing safety oversight activities and the actions that we take on a daily basis to help ensure that Metro Rail upholds its safety commitments and strives to continuously improve the safety of its system. Among the accident investigations that we are considering today, we will discuss the National Transportation Safety Board's investigation into the October 12th, 2021 Blue Line train derailment and the associated NTSB recommendations that the NTSB released to the public earlier this month. WMSC participated as a party to the investigation. And so the WMSC orders in 2021 and our subsequent oversight ensured that Metro Rail developed and implemented data-driven plans to ensure the safe return to service of all of the 7,000 series rail cars. We continue to oversee Metro Rail's implementation of its plans, including its current work to better align the wheel set assembly design specifications of the 7,000 series rail cars with industry practice for similar rail cars. Last week, the WMSC issued an order requiring Metro Rail to develop a corrective action plan to address the NTSB's recommendation to WMATA. This is part of our implementation of the NTSB's recommendation to us to ensure that Metro Rail implements the safety improvements recommended to WMATA. This is consistent with our authority under the WMSC Compact and our responsibilities under federal regulation to consider whether a Metro Rail corrective action plan is required to address the NTSB recommendation. Also last week, WMSC issued our second audit of Metro Rail's automatic train control and signals program. We audit each element of the Metro Rail's agency safety plan on a 3-year cycle. The previous train control and signals audit was issued in 2021. On behalf of DC metropolitan area residents in general and the Metro riding public in particular, I want to thank Dr. Meyer and his staff for their ongoing safety oversight work and for helping to continuously improve Metro safety by relentlessly leaving no stone unturned. Dr. Meyer, do you have any opening remarks for this meeting today?
Yes, I do. Maybe I'll check my audio before I continue. Can you hear me okay?
5 by 5.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Chair Hart. As you mentioned last week, we issued our latest audit of Metro Rail's automatic train control and signals program and an order requiring Metro Rail to address National Transportation Safety Board recommendation R2328, which calls on WMATA to implement processes and resources to expand the role of trend analysis in identifying and mitigating safety risks. The ATC audit, like each of our other audits, is based on extensive interviews, site visits, and document and data reviews conducted last year. When our team identified potential safety issues, we requested any necessary follow-up documents and confirmed information in interviews. The ATC system provides critical safety protections for train movement and roadway workers. These include functions such as safe train separation, prevention of overspeed derailments, fail-safe train detection, broken rail detection, interlocking rules enforcement, hazard response, and work zone protection. This audit demonstrates that Metrorail has implemented some improvements since the previous WMSC audit was issued in 2021 and our August 2022 train control room maintenance and cleaning order. But the audit also demonstrates that Metrorail is not carrying out key safety commitments. That audit found maintenance personnel do not have this audit found that maintenance personnel do not have a uniform understanding of Metrorail procedures, which leads to inadequate completion of safety tasks, such as inspections and handling of vital systems that are required to ensure that track circuits and other aspects of the ATC system function properly as required to prevent train collisions. The audit also identified deficiencies in engineering review of preventive maintenance data, health hazards for personnel working in facilities such as train control rooms, and deficiencies related to hazard identification and mitigation. We did find that Metrorail has begun work on hazard identification and mitigation following our direction and an FAA safety advisory. And we look forward to Metrorail progressing those improvements as part of the corrective action plan to address that finding. As we do for each audit, we requested and reviewed documents and data. We conducted field observations at locations across the Metrorail system to capture real-world conditions of facilities and equipment and the documentation being used in the field. Our field observations also included directly observing Metrorail personnel carrying out their work. And we also conducted interviews with personnel from frontline workers through leadership of responsible departments. At each stage, our team communicated any safety issues and followed up in subsequent interviews at the exit conference. After providing the draft report to Metrorail for its technical review and receiving their comments, we conducted a detailed review of Metrorail's comments and made adjustments as needed. Mr. Raddick will provide additional detail later in the meeting on the positive practices and the 5 findings and the 3 recommendations that were issued as part of this audit. We look forward to Metrorail developing and implementing corrective actions that support continuously improving the safety of the system. We continue our in-depth review of Metrorail's safety certification work on its automatic door operation and automatic train operation. This is a project that we designated for in-depth review in August of 2022, and we have been overseeing Metrorail's work in various forms for many years. As a project designated for in-depth review, Metrorail must receive our concurrence that it's properly carried out our safety certification process prior to utilizing these systems in passenger service. This is among the many topics that we communicate with Metrorail about on a regular basis as part of our daily oversight activities. Moving now to the NTSB investigation and the order that we issued last week, we participated as a party to the NTSB investigation into the October 12th, 2021 derailment that occurred between Roslyn and Arlington Cemetery stations. Our work, the WMSC's work, included responding to the scene of the final derailment, participating in track and vehicle inspections, work at other locations such as the wheelset manufacturer facility, data identification and analysis, working group meetings, and other activities. As part of this process, the WMSC and the other parties provided submissions in accordance with the NTSB's rules and regulations. The NTSB released its investigation report earlier this month, along with a safety recommendation to WMATA and a safety recommendation to the WMSC. The NTSB asked WMATA to expand the role of trend analysis in mitigating safety risks, and the recommendation to the WMSC is to support and monitor Metrorail's improved use of trend analysis. As Metrorail's safety regulator, the WMSC has the authority and responsibility to determine whether the NTSB findings and recommendation to Metrorail require Metrorail to develop a corrective action plan. The NTSB report noted our oversight authority and concluded that WMSC oversight of WMATA's implementation of trend analysis is needed to ensure Metrorail's compliance with the safety management system documented in its public transportation agency safety plan, and to ensure that Metrorail's trend analysis supports continued improvements in identifying and mitigating risks. The WMSC determined that the NTSB recommendation to WMATA does require Metro Rail to develop a corrective action plan, and consequently, the WMSC issued its order last week requiring Metro Rail to develop a CAP to address the safety recommendation. Metro Rail is required to develop the corrective action plan in accordance with the WMSC program standard, which include, like for any CAP, which includes submitting a proposed corrective action plan to the WMSC for review within 30 days. With this order, we've started to implement the NTSB's recommendation to the WMSC. That work will continue as we oversee Metro Rail's implementation of the improvements to its data collection and analysis that the NTSB recommended and that we've now required. The WMSC will formally respond to NTSB recommendation R2329 within the requested 90 days from the release of the report, confirming that we will implement this recommendation as part of our ongoing oversight program and our requirements for Metro Rail to implement a safety management system. We expect to incorporate Metro Rail's improved data process into our assessments. We've taken other actions since the derailment that have required Metro Rail to address other safety issues that arose during the investigation. This includes our orders and oversight related to 7000 series rail cars and Metro Rail's return to service plan. Since the derailment, we've overseen Metro Rail's progress on implementation of corrective actions that we have required in areas such as emergency management and safety certification. We'll discuss more about the investigation later in today's meeting. At the same time, we continue to oversee Metro Rail's ongoing 7000 series return to service plan. Metro Rail is continuing to build replacement wheel sets that have higher interference fit and press tonnage requirements. This is Metro Rail's effort to address an issue identified during the investigation by better aligning the wheel set assembly design specifications of the 7000 series rail cars with industry practice, and then implementing the increased wheel and axle interference fit and press tonnage. Metro Rail is still working on other aspects such as restraining rail and frog studies. Metro Rail is continuing to identify evidence of wheel migration on the wheel cars that have not yet been modified, and this shows the effectiveness of the current inspection process to this stage in identifying such wheel migration and removing those wheel sets from service. We continue work on our other investigations. To provide an update on the investigation adopted at the last meeting as requested by the commissioners, Metro Rail provided specifically the investigation involving a Metro Rail employee who departed a standing train at Congress Heights. Metro Rail provided additional detail regarding its decision to suspend a supervisor for what its internal investigation determined were inappropriate and unsafe actions. Staff have provided these materials that we recently received from Metro to the commissioners for review, and will make an opportunity available later in today's meeting for your discussion. We've also been closely monitoring Metro Rail's work related to its roadway worker protection program. Our roadway or wayside worker protection program audit is progressing toward an exit conference later this week, and Mr. Raddick will provide more information later today in this meeting. We are continuing to follow up with Metro Rail regarding the lead that Metro Rail identified in emergency medical cabinets as part of the implementation of a corrective action plan to address a finding from our emergency management and fire life safety audit. We've established regular updates from Metro Rail related to follow-up sampling and Metro Rail's overall response, and we have an internal WMSC working group on this issue. Our latest work includes a review of new Metro Rail sampling data and plans, as well as Metro Rail reports, schedules, and other documents. We also continue our oversight of Metro Rail's control center, including control center staffing, and we appreciate Metro Rail's latest update to us last week regarding ongoing work to recruit and train additional rail traffic controllers. Metro Rail currently has 44 rail traffic controllers. Metro Rail requires a minimum of 61. Metro Rail has 8 trainees and has other individuals who are expected to start training this spring. Metro Rail is making adjustments to its current pilot training course that 4 trainees are participating in, and it expects to use the improved course for the next training class. Metro Rail also has vacancies in supervisory positions for rail controllers that it's working to fill. We appreciate the ongoing effort to maintain this recruitment effort. established in response to CAPS to address prior WMSC findings. We remain focused on Metro Rail meeting its safety requirements to provide for the safest operation of the rail system. So this concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Dr. Meyer? Please say so because I can't see you from my screen. So if you have any questions, please announce yourself.
Hi, Chair Hart. This is Commissioner Rouse here. I just, as a matter of order here, are we going to get a chance to talk more about this derailment and the NTSB investigation and recommendations in the CAP later on? I think that's part of the agenda, right? I just don't
Yes,
see it clearly in our list.
It sure is. We'll have ample opportunity to discuss all aspects of it later in the meeting.
Great. I have a couple observations there, but I'll save it to that part of the discussion. So thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Rouse and Dr. Meyer. Any other questions from any of the other commissioners for Dr. Meyer? Okay, hearing none, we will now move on to our next item, which is audits with an update from Deputy Chief Operating Officer Davis Raddick. Mr. Raddick?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Last week, we issued our audit of Metro Rail's automatic train control and signals program. This is part of our ongoing second triennial cycle of audits. As with each audit report, we issued it after providing a draft report to Metro Rail for a 30-day review period. We incorporated any additional information from Metro Rail as warranted. The scope of this audit included the assessment of automatic train control and signaling facilities, equipment, systems, and software on both mainline and in yards. The ATC system provides critical safety protections for train movement and roadway workers. These include functions such as safe train separation, prevention of overspeed derailments, fail-safe train detection, interlocking rules enforcement, hazard response, and work zone protection. Metro Rail's ATC system includes physical components such as train control rooms, cabling, impedance bonds, marker coils, wayside signals, switch mechanisms, and relays, as well as software that is integral to the safe and proper operation of those components. Specific equipment and software relied upon by the ATC system is considered vital because its proper functioning is essential for the protection of human life. Metro Rail's ATC system design relies on fixed blocks based on track circuits. When a train or a shunt placed by roadway workers is in a particular section of track, it changes the flow of the electric current that runs through the running rails. This de-energizes a relay, which causes the block to indicate as occupied. Metro Rail has several types of track circuit modules. Information about occupied blocks, signal status, and other factors flows through equipment and train control rooms, including ATC modules and remote terminal units, then through communications lines to reach the advanced information system used by rail traffic controllers. The WMSC performed this ATC audit by conducting interviews, site visits, document reviews, and data reviews. Field visits included observations of scheduled preventive maintenance activities on an AF 800W track circuit modules and other work. We also visited multiple train control rooms across the system. These activities are explained in the report. As we observed safety issues, we noted those to personnel in the field, followed up during other site visits and in interviews to corroborate information and share concerns, and provided additional information to Metro Rail in the exit conference and through other communications. The audit demonstrates that Metro Rail has implemented some improvements since our prior ATC audit that was issued in 2021, and has made improvements due to the WMSC's 2022 train control room maintenance and cleaning order. But the audit also demonstrates that Metro Rail is not carrying out some key safety commitments. Examples of positive practices identified in the audit include the improvement of the condition of some train control rooms as a result of the WMSC's order, the existence of training facilities for personnel, and Metro Rail's establishment of governance processes for preventive maintenance deferral requests. The audit includes 5 findings that require Metro Rail to develop and implement corrective action plans. First, Metro Rail ATC maintenance personnel do not have a uniform understanding of Metro Rail procedures, which leads to an inadequate completion of safety tasks, such as inspections and handling of vital systems. that are required to ensure that track circuits and other elements of the ATC system function properly as required to prevent train collisions and to provide other design safety protections. Field observations, interviews, and discussions with other personnel demonstrated that Metrorail ATC maintenance personnel are not carrying out safety tasks as specified by Metrorail procedures. This creates the risk that vital systems will not function as required. This included maintenance personnel not understanding how to carry out AF 800W track circuit module preventive maintenance procedures, not following electrostatic discharge protection processes to protect circuit boards, not completing other work as required or with the in effect procedures, not conducting supervisory oversight, closing preventive maintenance work orders that are not complete, and not tracking deficiencies and required corrective maintenance to ensure that repairs are made. The second finding relates to Metrorail does not review, analyze, and act upon available safety data about the health and functionality of the automatic train control system and subsystems as required by Metrorail's agency safety plan. Therefore, Metrorail's ATC engineering cannot reliably or proactively determine whether or not the ATC system and subsystems are or will be functioning as designed to provide for the safety of riders and workers. Metrorail's safety management system commitments required by the WMSC program standard and federal regulation and specified in WMATA's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan require data collection, review, and analysis. However, ATC engineering personnel are generally only reviewing preventive maintenance data following a failure that causes a passenger delay and are utilizing reliability reports that are based only on the incomplete information in Metrorail's maintenance management system. The third finding is that relates to Metrorail is putting its personnel at risk due to health hazards such as damaged and repositioned materials marked as containing asbestos that are not being identified and managed as required by its agency safety plan. The WMSC observed disturbed floor tiles, some labeled with an asbestos warning at Arlington Cemetery Station, and observed similar disturbed tiles and mastic at other locations. Mastic is glue used to hold tiles in place. The WMSC reviewed these health hazards with Metrorail personnel on site and with Metrorail managers during audit interviews, followed up with several document requests discussed with Metrorail management and again during the exit conference for this audit, and provided Metrorail with a more detailed written description that was requested following the exit conference. The WMSC then reviewed additional follow-up documents provided by Metrorail. Metrorail had not documented these or other health hazards in its inspections. The fourth finding is Metrorail is not systematically identifying, tracking, and mitigating hazards related to automatic train control and signaling as required by its agency safety plan. Following WMSC direction and an FTA safety advisory, Metrorail is making progress towards its initial safety risk management launch for train control and signals. This process has not yet been implemented. This audit demonstrates that Metrorail had not been systematically identifying, tracking, and mitigating hazards related to automatic train control and signals. The fifth finding is Metrorail is not maintaining its books of plans in accordance with its requirements. Books of plans in train control rooms provide the basis for safe and effective work in the room, particularly work related to troubleshooting or repairs. Metrorail's manuals require these be kept up to date and usable, and require ATC personnel to check and maintain these books of plans. In many rooms visited by the WMSC, these books providing the electrical drawings for personnel are improperly marked, have torn or missing pages, or are otherwise dirty or damaged. Such damaged, dirty, or missing pages can lead to incorrect or delayed troubleshooting and repairs, which can create or exacerbate safety issues. For each finding, Metrorail is required to develop, then implement a corrective action plan. Metrorail is now developing corrective action plans to address each finding. These are required to be submitted next month for WMSC review. The WMSC must approve Metrorail CAPs prior to implementation. Recommendations are opportunities for safety improvement that do not meet the requirements of a finding. Metrorail must determine whether corrective action is necessary or submit a hazard analysis as justification to accept the level of risk. This ATC audit includes 3 such recommendations. First, Metrorail has not determined the required staffing for ATC and signals. Metrorail personnel interviewed for this audit expressed concern about staffing and alignment with within Metrorail's communications and signaling department, and the desire to conduct a staffing and organizational assessment to determine the required staffing levels for specific tasks. The second recommendation is Metrorail does not ensure that lessons learned from prior projects are consistently shared with all relevant personnel responsible for ATC and signals. And the third recommendation is that Metrorail does not have a procedure for the removal of hang tags in train control rooms that indicate temporary modifications. This has led to many rooms having such temporary hang tags in place for decades. The WMSC audit team observed temporary hang tags on wires in many train control rooms that had been in place since the 1970s, the 80s, and 90s. As described on the tags and in interviews, Metrorail intends for these tags to indicate temporary modifications from the printed book of plans, such as those use of spare cables that would then be replaced in the future or incorporated into permanent future updates. However, Metrorail has no process to incorporate the information and to remove these tags to provide for clearer access to wiring and provide assurance that the books of plans are accurate. As I mentioned, Metrorail's proposed corrective action plans are due next month. We have transmitted the draft report to WMATA for our audit of Metrorail's power systems programs. Metrorail has until the end of this week to provide any comments on that draft report. As always, we will carefully review Metrorail's response to determine whether any adjustments are needed. When this work is complete, we will issue a final report. We are developing the draft report for our audit of Metrorail's revenue vehicles or railcar programs. Later this week, we are scheduled to hold the exit conference for our roadway worker or wayside worker protection audit. As with each audit, we conduct this in-depth audit. This in-depth audit builds on items identified in safety event investigations, inspections, and other oversight activities. The work included observations on and near the Metrorail right-of-way, observation of training and qualification activities, and interviews with various personnel. We have reviewed and are continuing to review Metrorail documents and data, as well as past inspection reports and investigations. After the exit conference and review of any additional information provided by Metrorail, the team will progress to a draft and final report. Our audits assess Metrorail against the relevant criteria, such as the requirements of Metrorail's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, requirements specified in other Metrorail documents, such as standard operating procedures, manuals, orders, and regulatory requirements. These audits cover all aspects of Metrorail's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan over a 3-year period and are designed to proactively identify safety issues. We take steps to ensure Metrorail personnel feel free to speak openly and transparently with us during each interaction, as this leads to the greatest opportunity for accurate and meaningful recognition of positive practices or areas for improvement. During each audit, we communicate safety issues identified during on-site activities to Metrorail personnel. Thank you, and that completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Raddick. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Raddick?
Chair Hart, this is Commissioner Lobby. I have a couple of questions.
Yes, please, Commissioner Lobby.
Mr. Raddick, you stated in your presentation that that the audit demonstrates Metrorail is not carrying out some key safety commitments. And to me, commitments are things that were committed to before this audit took place. The 5 findings that you've described to us, are these new, or are these similar or the same findings that occurred when the previous audit was done?
Thank you, Commissioner Lobby. To answer your question, these are new findings. They don't duplicate the prior audit findings on this topic area.
Okay, so essentially, do we agree that Metrorail addressed the prior findings from the last audit?
Yes.
Okay. I have one other question, and this has to do with with Metro's adoption of automatic train operation and automatic door operation. We did this audit just recently, and certainly Metro is in the middle of trying to readopt these systems. Is there any gap between that we should be looking at between the audit that we've just completed and an audit that would include these two systems when they're fully operational?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, are you asking that whether this audit included ATO aspects, or what?
Well, we do this every 3 years. It's a stupid question. So first of all, we do this every 3 years, and we're not going to do another one of these signal system audits for another 3 years. But in the meantime, ATO and ADO is being added to the mix. Are there elements of the audit that you've just completed that we should use to look specifically at these two systems as they are reestablished on the system?
I think one of the things that we could say to that is that the first finding of the audit really focuses on the extent to which Metrorail is carrying out its procedures as intended, and it also includes some elements of document management, forms control, and attention to detail as inspection and maintenance procedures go. The audit was as the system as it's being operated today in manual mode, but those kinds of elements are equally important in an automated system, if not even more so. So we will certainly be informed by those findings as we go forward in our oversight of Metrorail's work to activate ATO and any concurrence that we might provide down the road.
So even like a simple example, the plan books that include the schematics of the different systems. With your audit, will the plan books that include the ATO and ADO systems that are being reestablished, will they be included in these plan books as they update them?
Mr. Smith, did you want to speak to that?
Absolutely. Yes, thank you, Commissioner Levy, and thank you, Mr. Meyer. Yes, so ADO and ATO systems are being reintroduced, and they rely on already, developed and systems that are already in place. So those systems will be included in those book of plan updates that they're making.
I know, Mr. Smith, you're going to talk about, this project to bring back ATO and ADO, and if you would, as you discuss it, again, how are we convinced that these same findings that we had on the train control system on this audit we just completed are being handled appropriately as these two systems, the ATO and ADO, are recommissioned? So I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, but we can wait until you do your presentation to hear that.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Levy.
That's Chair Hart.
Thank you, Commissioner Lobby. Are there any questions, any other questions from the commissioners for Mr. Raddick?
Yes, Chair Hart, this is Commissioner Rouse. I have one quick question as well.
Yes, Commissioner Rouse, please go ahead.
And I may have missed it, but the discussion of the recommendation on the tags piqued my interest. It was mentioned that there was no process to remove the tags, and that's okay. But I'm more concerned about what goes into change in the process for managing change in of itself, especially on a vital system like this, right? And so, is there a process for if there's a blue tag there because somebody had to modify something? Was there an investigation as to how everything flows from the identification of a need for a change, who approves that change, and how that change actually gets eventually documented, hopefully on the drawings that may or may not be in a book, right? So My bigger concern being, and this is not unique to WMATA, this happens with other railroads with control systems, especially now in PTC era. Was there an adequate change management process behind it? And was it only this procedure for removing and updating these tags, or is there other issues potentially there?
Thank you, Commissioner Rouse. So the Metro does have change management procedures. It seems that this was just not incorporated, and it was just not, these tags were never thought of to put that into practice for this particular corner. But I will defer to Paul Smith here if he has anything to add on this as well.
Yeah, no, I think that covers it. To your question, Commissioner Rouse, is they do have a process for implementing these changes that they make with these special order tags. They do flow through an engineering change process. But like Mr. Raddick explained, there was no process that we could determine or find, and even in our investigation, where we questioned engineering folks on how these tags were kind of closed out. So that was kind of the gap that we saw, was just not that it was a problem so much, but we noticed tags that were placed decades ago being still, displayed there, even though the changes have been incorporated into the book of plans. And so now they're going to implement some type of process to remove those tags.
Okay, thank you. You answered the question. And that's perfectly fine, right? And that was my bigger issue, is when you scratch a little bit and you say, okay, is this indicative of something bigger, or do we really just have that part under wraps and it's just this issue that somebody found later? So thank you for answering that.
You bet.
Thank you, Commissioner Rouse. Are there any other questions from any of the commissioners? Okay, hearing none, we will now take up the next agenda item, which is corrective action plans, with an update from Mr. John O'Donnell. Mr. O'Donnell?
Oh, thank you, Chair Hart. Since our last public meeting, we have closed 3 caps and approved 3 new caps for implementation. When Metrorail develops corrective action plans to address the safety deficiencies identified by the WMSC findings and recommendations, Metrorail submits these plans to the WMSC for review and approval. After Metrorail submits acceptable cap proposals that will address the safety deficiency and receives WMSC's approval, Metrorail is responsible for implementing its corrective action plans on the schedule set forth in the cap. Metrorail submits records of each actionable item in each cap after each step is completed. Metrorail's implementation of each of these caps improves the safety of the system for riders and workers. The 3 new caps approved for implementation since our last meeting address findings and recommendation from our roadway maintenance machines audit that was issued in October. C0242 will address a finding that Metrorail has not documented its practices regarding adjustments to its contractor roadway maintenance machine inspection procedures. C0245 will address a recommendation that Metrorail more effectively collect and proactively utilize roadway maintenance machine reliability data to ensure safe and effective operations. C0249 will address a recommendation that Metrorail improve the effectiveness of training and available operational manuals for roadway maintenance machines by providing a consistent, complete format that documents operational restrictions and allows personnel to identify where to look for such information, and by incorporating these information into a recurring training. Overall, Metrorail has 93 open caps that it is in the process of implementing. During that implementation, the WMSC reviews information to verify progress. This includes reviewing items provided by Metrorail and other oversight activities. Examples of our ongoing oversight of Metrorail cap implementation include our oversight of cap C0171. This cap addresses our emergency management and fire life safety audit finding that emergency equipment and station medical cabinets is expired and covered in dirt. Due to the WMSC's finding, Metrorail developed a corrective action plan. During the implementation of this corrective action plan, Metrorail evaluated the dirt and dust in these cabinets and determined that it contained lead. As noted earlier, we are continuing to follow up with Metrorail and we are monitoring Metrorail's activities related to the equipment kept in the cabinets, the replacement of the equipment Metrorail is making available to local first responders elsewhere in stations. We are also monitoring Metrorail's activities related to the assessment and determination of other areas that may contain lead requiring mitigations. We have established regular updates from Metrorail related to follow-up sampling and Metrorail's overall response, and also have an internal MSC working group on this issue. This group is reviewing Metrorail data submissions. Recently, this includes review of materials composition information collected by Metrorail and Metrorail rapid spot sampling conducted while Metrorail works on a more comprehensive program. As another example of our proactive CAP oversight, we have been actively monitoring Metrorail's progress on implementing physical characteristics training as required under CAP C0183. Our proactive oversight and focus has helped ensure Metrorail is on track toward meeting its current deadlines. As I mentioned, the WMSC has closed 3 CAPs since our last public meeting. CAP C0111 addressed a finding from our ATC audit issued in 2021 that identified that Metrorail did not have adequate replacement parts or materials and had not planned for the obsolescence of critical equipment. To mitigate this for the aging system, Metrorail developed parts and materials inventories, including lead times, and identified items needing immediate or longer-term action to maintain a good state of repair. The new procedure identifies and solicits internal feedback on any modifications required to existing items and obsolescence. C0223 addressed a recommendation from the communication system audit issued in 2022 that Metrorail had no comprehensive plan to maintain staffing of its existing positions through timely hiring practices. Metrorail determined the approach and resources needed to maintain staffing of qualified professionals for its communication systems and has begun to implement that approach. Metrorail provided records demonstrating it had reduced its vacancies. C0229 addressed the findings from our track maintenance and training audit issued in December 2022 that identified that Metrorail risked key maintenance work performed on rail lubricators coming to a halt due to insufficient succession planning and training to ensure that lubricators are properly maintained in accordance with Metrorail's written procedures. Metrorail conducted a staffing analysis and determined that at least 2 additional workers who were trained on lubrication tasks were needed. Metrorail identified 2 mechanics and provided the training to those mechanics in November. 2 other mechanics previously assigned to the task also completed this instructor-led training, providing Metrorail with backup personnel to perform this rail lubrication task. Even after a CAP is closed, the WMSC monitors Metrorail's actions on an ongoing basis through our audit, inspection, and other oversight activities. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. O'Donnell?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
I noticed that some of the caps are dated 21. When a cap is issued, is there any time frame that's put on towards the completion? I mean,
Thank you, Commissioner Fardike. It takes some discussion with WMATA on appropriate timelines. Some caps will see this, only take a few months to complete. It might be procedural updates, it might be documentation updates, those type of things. But there's longer updates, such as structures caps or track caps that can take certainly years to implement. So there is a discussion during the creation process on the timeline that we're going to see for each cap. So it's really cap dependent on what the issue is.
But if I may add to address your question, once we have approved a corrective action plan, there is a very specific timeline embedded in the requirements of that cap. And so to answer your question, yes, each cap has a very definitive time frame within which each cap and each of the deliverables within those caps need to be implemented.
so for example, the first one we just saw that was dated 2021. So did you give it a 2024 due date? Or was it a 2023? Was there a due date that was put on it originally when it was discussed?
There was a due date put on it when it was originally discussed, and the burden is on Metro to propose a timetable for each actionable item in the process. So as I'm sitting here, I don't know if any extensions were granted during the process, but there are very clear timeframes that are proposed by Metro for each cap, for each actionable item. We hold them accountable for those. And if they come to us and ask for an adjustment in the due date, we give very careful consideration to the rationale, and sometimes we grant those and sometimes we don't.
Are there any further questions from any of the commissioners? From Mr. O'Donnell?
I have a question, Chair Hart.
Yes, Commissioner Lobby.
Mr. O'Donnell, maybe you can't answer this, but maybe some of the staff can. We had heard about the lead dust that was ending up on the medical cabinets. Did we ever determine, or did Washington Metro ever determine a source of that lead? We had talked about it before, and I don't remember ever hearing an answer. Can someone answer where we are on that?
Thank you, Commissioner Lobby. Sharmila, do you want to?
Sure. The latest information, and I want to underscore my response to make sure we are clear, the information is still being gathered and there is further fine tuning and refinement to the information I'm about to say. So the latest information on the source of that lead includes sourcing from the 2,000, 3,000, 6,000 and 7,000 brake pads, as well as consideration of possible sourcing from the tracks themselves and the rail car wheels themselves. So those were the sources that Metro Rail had looked at and noticed that there is sources of lead from especially the brake pads.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Lobby. Any further questions from Mr. O'Donnell? Okay, thank you. Hearing none, our next agenda item is an update on some of WMSC's latest activities overseeing Metro Rail safety certification process. Paul Smith, WMSC Director, Systems Engineering, will present this item. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Metro Rail safety certification process is a critical element of Metro Rail's safety management system. Identifying and understanding failure modes or hazards and proactively mitigating the likelihood and severity of those hazards in a systematic way, as documented in Metro Rail's policy and procedures, provides for the overall safety of the Metro Rail system. Metro Rail implements its safety certification program, and we, the WMSC, oversee Metro Rail's work through field observations, document and data review, and regular meetings with Metro Rail, as well as by observing the discussions among Metro Rail safety certification committees and working groups. Metro Rail is required to carry out this work for each of its projects that meet its criteria for safety certification. In accordance with our program standard, we designate specific projects for the WMSC's in-depth review of Metro Rail safety certification activities. For these projects, Metro Rail may not activate the asset or system into service until the WMSC concurs that Metro Rail has conducted its safety certification process, including hazard identification and any mitigations or corrective actions. Projects currently under our in-depth review include Metro Rail's new 8,000 series rail cars, Metro Rail's automated wayside inspection system, and Metro Rail's work related to automatic train operation and automatic door operation. We monitor Metro Rail's safety certification working groups, documentation, and other activities. We have been overseeing Metro Rail's work related to automatic train operation and automatic door operation for several years. We have conducted and observed weekly meetings, observed Metro Rail field activities, and have been in continuous contact with Metro Rail's project team and other personnel. Automatic door operation is separate from the automatic train operation, and Metro Rail's safety certification work on automatic door operation is specific to that system. It does not include ATO. Metro Rail completed the safety certification requirements in December to operate the automatic door open feature of automatic door operation system on the Red Line. This led to our concurrence with Metrorail's temporary use notice for the use of automatic doors on the Red Line. Our concurrence was required because this project is under our in-depth review. This temporary use notice includes mitigations that Metrorail has determined it must carry out, such as ensuring trains are only in automatic door operation on the Red Line, that these trains are only operated by operators that are trained and certified on automatic door operation, and that switches are properly sealed. Sealing switches is a safety mitigation that provides a level of assurance that the critical switches are not manipulated accidentally or without permission. These seals are also intended to provide a verification regarding whether the switch has remained in the same position throughout the train's operation. Metrorail is now working on the safety certification of the use of automatic door opening for the rest of the system. This includes system testing as well as training for specified personnel. Metrorail is separately advancing additional work soon related specifically to automatic train operation, or ATO. In alignment with the adjustments Metrorail has made to its work over the last 6 months due to our oversight, Metrorail has, for the first time now, developed an initial draft of a concept of operations for the ATO system. The WMSC has now provided feedback and questions to Metrorail, or will be providing those. We've also provided feedback and questions last week to Metrorail based on the data Metrorail provided related to the planned use of automatic door operation on the other lines. We continue to work on other safety certification oversight. This includes observations of Metrorail's wheel set replacement program and monitoring of Metrorail's ongoing work on potential wayside inspection systems. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners?
I have a couple of questions, Chair Hart.
Go ahead.
Yes, Commissioner Lobby.
I just wanted to return to the previous question so I understand this. You know, we just completed an automatic train control audit, and we have the results of that. And Mr. Smith, you have your ongoing activities on the automatic train operation and automatic door operation through the safety certification oversight process. Is this essentially an audit of those systems?
I don't know that I would term it necessarily as an audit, more of an ongoing observation of Metrorail's adherence to their own procedures and policies on how they implement a system such as ATO or ADO or any other system for that matter.
Okay. Well, my concern is that we've just completed an automatic train control audit, and we're not scheduled to do another one for 3 years. And in the meantime, we're making basically and approving a basic change in how they're operating with the automatic train operations, automatic door operations. Would it be appropriate, and this is just a question, would it be appropriate to do another automatic train control audit within a year or so when these other systems are up and running, or is that overkill? I need an opinion on that.
Yeah, go ahead, Sharmila. I see you've come off mute if you want to.
So the triennial audits are just one of the 5 or 6 tools that we have in our toolbox in conducting the ongoing monitoring of the system safety at Metro. And so in place of the audit idea that you're floating, what we will be doing is an ongoing effort that Paul, along with the several team members, are applying on safety certification on automatic train operations, which would be looking at similar pieces of the ATC system that is being described in the audit. We will be looking at maintenance practices. We will be looking at the health of inspection practices, maintenance practices, and the training and availability of personnel. All these things are part of the safety certification effort that is going to be applied in order to validate that Metro Rail has carried out the safety certification process that supports activating ATO and therefore supports us concurring on the safety certification process being carried out to activate ATO. So that's a roundabout way of answering your question, where the parts of the elements that were looked at through the audit will be looked at continuously between now and us concurring on ATO. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Lobby?
Sort of. It it goes back to, would we consider the ATO and ADO systems, audited, between the automatic train control audit that we've just completed and the safety certification that's ongoing. And it sounds like it's basically giving us an audit of these new systems. But again, my question is, are there gaps between the two processes? And if there are gaps, even if we don't do a complete automatic train control audit, would it be appropriate to do a ATO, ADO mini audit after these things are up and running to make sure that the plans are complete, to make sure that the documentation is correct? Or is that part of the safety certification? Is that all taken care of and we don't need to worry about that?
I think really all of the above, actually, Commissioner Lobby. I mean, down the road, if and when ATO and ADO are fully operational throughout the system, we would plan to conduct, we haven't discussed this internally, but we've done it for other systems that we've safety certified, that we've concurred on Metro safety certification. We would be out there doing focused inspections. We would be out there conducting other safety oversight work, the different tools in the toolbox, as Ms. Samara Singha alluded to, and just to make sure that we're very clear on the issue, although an audit is per se a rather broad-brushed instrument and also a fairly high workload item. If we determine that we need to do another audit before the 3-year cycle calls for us to do it, the schedule's ours to adjust, and we won't hesitate to do so.
Well, that's good to know. And again, my concern is that we don't wait for 3 years to find out we have a problem with how they're handling ATO, ADO. So, I trust you folks to essentially, make sure that we have the right information, to make sure the plans are right, to make sure the configuration control is being exercised. But I'm glad that we're not completely committed to the 3-year schedule, and that we can take other steps if needed or if appropriate, as these systems are recommissioned and put into place.
Absolutely. We obviously we have to have a 3-year schedule in order for us and for Metro to plan resources. But that said, since our earliest days, we have rearranged that schedule based on what we perceive to be risk or other factors that require us to adjust the schedule and conduct an audit sooner, or even delay it if Metro is on the brink of making some major change. So we manage that schedule with an appropriate level of dynamic engagement.
Well, I'd offer, since these are 2 safety critical systems here, that a mini audit, 1 year from now or something, might be appropriate just on those systems to make sure that they match up with our findings on the bigger automatic train control system.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Chair Hart, I had a related question. May have already been answered, but it's slightly different.
Yes, please go ahead.
I was wondering if Mr. Smith could comment on the role of the ATC system in the proper functioning of the ATO functionality. I assume that it's a foundational system that's necessary to move to those higher levels of automation. But if you could expand on that a little bit, and I think that goes to Commissioner Lobby's concern that the baseline system be, have a clean bill of health and functioning properly in order to step up the level of automation.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Commissioner Conklin. So to kind of borrow some of the phraseology from Commissioner Rouse, ATO essentially is a system of systems, which relies on the ATC system as an overall architecture. So ATC kind of is the overall arching system. Then you have several different systems that make up that. So ATP is one of the vital systems that is included in the ATC system that basically provides the protection for train separation. That system is relied upon heavily in the ATO operation, both from a wayside perspective as well as from a rail car perspective. They all come together to kind of form ATO. WMATA tends to refer to ATO as this kind of standalone thing, but it doesn't operate like that in reality. It's a collection of inputs and outputs based, from the ATP system, the ATC system, as well as the ATP functionality on the carborne. Does that kind of answer your question, Commissioner Conklin?
That does. So I'm reaching a conclusion, which you can validate or refute, that in order for the ATO to be implemented, you would need to close out the cap for ATC.
It would be one of the things that we will be looking for them to complete. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And thank you for your questions from all the commissioners. That's very helpful. And thank you, Dr. Meyer, for clarification.
Thank you, Chair.
Are there any further questions for Mr. Smith? Okay, hearing none, we will now move on to the NTSB investigation report and associated.
It actually looked like Commissioner Rouse was trying to speak.
Yeah, sorry, I was just failure to use the mute button correctly. IT issues. Just one quick one, and Mr. Smith, if you can remind me, was there any conditions on the temporary use approval for the red line automatic doors, in terms of any specific criteria for moving over to the whole system? Like a success rate or failure issues or anything like that. I can't remember if that was part of that.
We didn't have any benchmarks for that. They had indicated that they have some KPIs in their test documents that they would adhere to before they would implement it in service on the red line. They've met those. I wouldn't imagine that they would have any more stringent requirements for the key performance indicators for moving to the rest of the system that we've seen or they've documented.
Okay, yeah, and I'm honestly just thinking out loud here because I've run into this before as well. Whenever we issue, or even for their part as well, right? If there's a temporary situation, a test scenario, if you will, part of the reason for doing that in a smaller bite is to validate it before you roll it out everywhere. So if we don't have clear criteria as to what has to happen on that stage before, as a gate, if you will, before moving on to a wider application, that's something we should probably do moving forward, is make sure we have those in place.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Rouse.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Smith?
Chair Hart, can I be disruptive and go back one agenda item? Do we have a sense for when the investigation of the lead source might be resolved? This was related to the medical kits and the lead containing dust, and the source potentially being from rail cars. But I was just curious whether we have a sense of when they'll conclusively be able to identify that.
Dr. Meyer, let me turn that one over to you.
I'm actually looking to Ms. Samara Singha or Mr. O'Donnell, who are a little bit closer to that issue. I know there's ongoing work to do some engineering testing to attempt to answer the question. But as far as time frame, Ms. Samara Singha?
That was what I was going to mention to Commissioner Conklin. There is no set time frame, Commissioner Conklin, because there are different parallel efforts that have different timelines that are going on right now. As a matter of fact, we have we received a large volume of information and data on the 5th of January, which over the last 2 weeks, we've been poring over and just getting ready to send over follow-up questions on the data that we are seeing and the plans that Metro has said that they will be putting in place in terms of mitigating activities. So there is no definitive timeline that we can offer you right now.
Okay, thank you.
But I might take from the exchange that asking Metro to provide us its timeline would be an appropriate question to include in our package back to them.
Yeah, the reason I was asking if lead dust is accumulating in some places, it's likely in other places too. That might be more concerning than infrequently used equipment.
Absolutely.
So on that note, what other options are we looking at outside of the existing possibilities to see where this lead dust is coming from and what we can do to keep it from happening?
We are monitoring very closely Metro Rail's activities to do just that, and we have utilized through previously established contracts. We have utilized some consultant expert assistance to guide us in our oversight of the matter, and we are definitely concerned with both adequacy of scope of what Metro is doing and timeliness, and will continue to push to oversee this work and ensure that it results in answers in a timely fashion.
Do we have a sense of whether the lead dust in the closets presents a hazard to the traveling public?
I'm looking to Ms. Samarasinga to see if she wants to answer that.
We don't have definitive information to make a conclusion on that, Chair Hart.
I don't know anything about the nature of this hazard, whether it's airborne or whether it's not airborne, or just exactly that's the reason I'm asking the question out of ignorance, because I don't really know enough about how it could get there in the first place and what can be done to keep it from spreading.
All of these aspects are part of the ongoing work that Metro is doing. The hazard presents itself, just to answer the specific question, when it's airborne as opposed to when it's not. However, all of this is part of what the work that Metro is doing and our oversight. And maybe what I would suggest is we continue our interaction with Metro Rail, ask them the questions that we just indicated that we have based on their recent submission to us, and come back a little bit better prepared to present on the issue to you.
Another question thank you for that. Another question we might want to explore is whether there are other systems, whether other properties in the country have lead problems as well.
We can certainly do that as well.
Any further questions before we move on to the next item? Thank you for those very helpful questions. I appreciate that. Okay, we will now move on to the NTSB investigation report and associated recommendations related to the October 2021 Blue Line train derailment. Dr. Meyer, do you have any opening remarks for this investigation report?
Yes, sir, I do. The WMSC responded to the scene of the final derailment on October 12th, 2021, and several members of our team worked throughout the investigation process. This included site visits throughout the Metro Rail system, visits to the wheelset manufacturer's facility, and participating in many working group activities. The WMSC took actions during the investigation, such as issuing orders requiring Metro Rail to remove the 7000 series rail cars from passenger service and to provide for the safe return to service of each 7000 series rail car. The WMSC oversaw Metro Rail's development of its return to service plans by ensuring that they were based on safety data. The WMSC continues to oversee Metro Rail's implementation of such plans, and we've taken other actions in the course of regular oversight activities that relate to issues identified during the investigation and that are improving safety of the system. The NTSB released its final report of the investigation on January 4th. The WMSC program standard provides that the WMSC may adopt an NTSB report and require associated corrective actions. Therefore, the report is being presented for your consideration for adoption today. As part of the investigative process, the WMSC and other parties provided party submissions to the NTSB last year in accordance with the NTSB's rules. And the material before you includes the WMSC's party submission as we submitted it. When the NTSB issues safety recommendations to Metrorail, our program standard and federal regulation provide that the WMSC will determine whether a Metrorail corrective action is required. We determined that a cap was required in this case, and the order we issued last week requires Metrorail to develop and carry out a corrective action plan to address NTSB recommendation R2328 to WMATA to implement processes and resources to expand the role of trend analysis in identifying and mitigating safety risks. The CAP development process is the same as for any other CAP and is specified in our program standard. That includes the requirement that Metrorail develop and submit a proposed corrective action plan to the WMSC within 30 days of our order. I'll now ask Investigative Program Manager Adam Quigley to provide more information about the accident.
Thank you. Blue Line training derailed at least 3 times on October 12th, 2021. These derailments occurred while the train was in passenger service. The first 2 times the train derailed, it re-railed. These derailments were not identified until the investigation into the final derailment began. The WMSC responded to the scene of the final derailment. The final derailment occurred after the train departed Roslyn Station toward Arlington Cemetery Station, where there is a single switch rather than the crossover present at the 2 other known derailment locations. The train derailed in a tunnel. Shortly thereafter, in compliance with control center instructions, the train operator attempted to, and did, move the train with passengers on board, and the train again came to a stop. Metrorail did not immediately address reports of the derailment and smoke from riders on the train. Personnel in the Rail Operations Control Center did not realize that the train had derailed in a tunnel. Approximately 1.5 hours after this final derailment, Metrorail began the evacuation of 187 riders on board. At 6:44 p.m., nearly 2 hours after the derailment and after the evacuation had begun, a controller activated the exhaust fan at Roslyn Station to clear smoke from the tunnel. The National Transportation Safety Board developed an animation related to the investigation that was also released on January 4th. We will share that video now.
On October 12, 2021, NTSB investigators responded to the derailment of southbound WMATA train 407 on the Blue Line near Roslyn Station. The train derailed at 4:49 p.m. at the switch about 166 feet south of Roslyn Station, where the Blue Line separates from the Orange and Silver Lines. Passengers evacuated on foot south to the Arlington Cemetery Station. Investigators found evidence that train 407 had derailed but then gotten back onto the tracks or re-railed on its prior trip at rail crossovers at 2 additional locations. Northbound at Arlington Cemetery Station at 3:24 p.m. and westbound at Largo Town Center Station at 4:13 p.m. Surveillance cameras at Arlington Cemetery Station and Largo Town Center Station captured the previous derailments on video. The video from the Arlington Cemetery Station shows the 5th rail car experiencing vertical body disturbance as its rear truck derails and then re-rails. The movement can be seen at the top of the rail car. At Largo Town Center Station, the same truck on the same rail car derailed and re-railed. Because the train was traveling in the opposite direction, it was the lead truck of the 4th rail car. Note the dust visible under the train, consistent with the derailed wheels disturbing the concrete under the rails. By design, the width of WMATA's railcar wheel set should not exceed 53 3/8 inches. However, investigators found that the distance between the wheels on the derailed wheel set was about 2 inches more than allowed by design specification. Laboratory examination found that the extra width was a result of wheel migration, the gradual movement of wheels on the axle. As the widened wheel set on the rear axle of the truck approached the switch points of the Arlington Cemetery crossover, the wheel set derailed to the left in the switch point area where trains on track 1 can be diverted to track 2. The switch was set for trains to pass straight through on track 1. The wheel set remained derailed until it reached the frog area of the next switch where trains from track 2 can pass on to track 1. The rails leading from track 2 into track 1 push the wheel set back into position on the rails. The derailment and rerailment at Largo Town Center happened the same way. In the Roslyn Station derailment, the train was still traveling in the opposite direction from the derailment at Arlington Cemetery, and the front axle of the lead truck on the 4th rail car derailed. The widened wheel set derailed at the switch where the blue line separates from the orange and silver line, which is not a part of a crossover. Because there was no crossover leading back to the blue line to guide the derailed wheel set back onto the track, the train remained derailed. The derailments occurred in the switch areas because fastening and bracing makes the track structure stiffer in these locations. The increased stiffness of the track structure forced the widened wheel set upward and off the rails. In response to the derailment and subsequent NTSB investigation, WMATA removed all 7,000 series rail cars from service and inspected all 2,992 of their wheel sets. During these inspections, WMATA identified about 50 wheel sets that exceeded the maximum allowable width. In the 4 years prior to the derailment, WMATA had identified about 30 other wheel sets for a total of 80 wheel sets that exceeded the maximum allowable width. None of the other wide wheel sets showed wheel migration as severe as the roughly 2 inches observed on the accident wheel set. Wheel sets are assembled by press fitting wheels onto axles. In press fitting, the axle diameter is greater than the wheel bore. The difference is called interference. The resulting joint or interference fit is held together by friction. Analysis of the widened wheel set found that the wheel sets assembled with the greater interference were more resistant to wheel migration. WMATA increased the specified interference for 7,000 series wheel sets and began replacing wheel sets in July of 2023, with the replacement of wheel sets for the entire fleet scheduled to take 3 years. WMATA has gradually been returning 7,000 series rail cars to service. They physically inspect wheel set widths every 30 days on rail cars using the original wheel sets and every 60 days for rail cars with the new wheel sets.
WMSC's party submission includes several safety issues. The WMSC has taken action to require Metrorail to address many of these. Related to the emergency response, the WMSC noted that Metrorail's training, safety promotion, and information available to personnel were insufficient to prepare personnel to effectively respond to or manage emergencies. After the final derailment between Roslyn and Arlington Cemetery stations, Metrorail Control Center personnel focused on the troubleshooting and train movement even after riders reported smoke to the train operator and reported to Metro Transit Police that the train had derailed, contacting the tunnel wall and that there was smoke. These reports were not communicated to rail traffic controllers. Moments after the final derailment, a passenger on the train called Metro Transit Police to report the derailment and to report smoke. The WMATA employee receiving this call took no action to address the reported emergency and did not communicate this safety event to the Rail Operations Control Center or other personnel who could take action to immediately respond to the derailment and prevent further train movement. The rider called again several minutes later and said that the derailed train was being moved and dragged. This report was not acted upon. The individual in the Rail Operations Information Center called Metro Transit Police approximately 10 minutes after the initial rider report that was not acted upon. The Rail Operations Information Center was calling to report that the train was disabled with a brake issue, unaware that Metro Transit Police had already received direct, accurate, and clear rider reports of the accident. Metro Rail procedures require that upon report of smoke, the smoke is to be investigated and riders are to be assisted to another part of the train. The rail traffic controller directed the train operator to attempt to override what they believe to be a stuck holding brake and to attempt to move the train. Neither the train operator nor personnel in the Rail Operations Control Center were aware that the train had derailed. As a result of this shared lack of situational awareness and inaction on available safety information, the derailed train was further dragged approximately 1,200 feet. The train operator then reported they could not move the train up the incline. At approximately 5:02 p.m., approximately 11 minutes after the final derailment, the train operator, having been directed by the rail traffic controller to go to the car displaying a brake issue, car 7200, identified and reported the derailment. Third rail power was de-energized at 5:03 p.m. Metro Rail's emergency response did not identify that the train was in a tunnel, which contributed to the delayed activation of ventilation fans following reports of smoke. Further, Metro Rail's advanced information management system screens do not provide personnel in the Rail Operations Control Center with information about the physical characteristics at the location in the Metro Rail system where an emergency is occurring. The Buttons Rail Traffic Controller was not familiar with the physical characteristics of the system and did not know the location of the derailed train was underground. Further, the report of smoke should have led to the use of a smoke response checklist. This checklist, which was not completed during the derailment response, includes initiating tunnel ventilation fan procedures and instructing train operators to shut down ventilation systems to prevent smoke from entering rail cars. Rail Operations Control Center managers did not effectively communicate with the jurisdictional fire liaison officer or Metro Rail's incident management official that there was a report of smoke. Metro Transit Police Department personnel arrived at the train approximately 44 minutes after the derailment. Passenger evacuation began approximately 6:20 p.m. and concluded at approximately 7:16 p.m. The jurisdictional fire liaison stationed in the Rail Operations Control Center ensured that electrical safety equipment, the warning strobe, and alarm devices were placed in the necessary locations after identifying deficiencies in the safety setup. The WMSC has required Metro Rail to take action on its emergency response practices and its training for rail traffic control personnel. This includes audit findings that have resulted in corrective action plans to address deficiencies in incident management and incident command, and associated training and findings related to the Rail Operations Control Center staffing and procedures. As mentioned earlier, the WMSC also took action to address other areas related to the investigation, such as the orders issued in October and December of 2021 related to Metro Rail's 7000 series rail cars. Our work to ensure Metro Rail's plans were data-driven and our ongoing oversight of Metro Rail's finalized return to service plans. This has led to Metro Rail now implementing a wheel set replacement program to address deficiencies related to the 7000 series rail car design that were not identified and acted upon during the rail car design and acceptance process. Metro Rail is also now using improved measurement tools, has improved supervisory oversight and data monitoring for back-to-back measurements, and has provided training for its personnel on this process. Among our other oversight work, the WMSC has also required Metro Rail to develop and take steps to implement its safety management system. This includes our oversight of Metro Rail's agency safety plan development and findings requiring corrective action plans to ensure compliance with the safety promotion, safety assurance, and safety risk management requirements. Currently, Metro Rail is measuring 7000 series rail car wheel set back-to-back, the distance between the wheels, and journal bearing gap, the distance between the bearing and the wheel, every 30 days for cars with wheel sets matching either of Metro Rail's original specifications. Metro Rail continues to identify evidence of wheel migration on 7000 series rail cars through this process. Metro Rail is assembling new wheel sets with a higher interference fit and press tonnage that better aligns with industry norms for cars of the weight of the 7000 series. Metrorail has begun utilizing some of these new wheel sets in service. The newest of those wheel sets are subject to an engineering test plan. They are being measured more frequently and will undergo more detailed inspections after running in service. If the engineering test is successful, Metrorail will place all cars with wheel sets with the increased interference fit and press tonnage on a 60-day cycle for back-to-back and journal bearing measurements. The investigation demonstrated that Metrorail was aware of wheel migration on its rail cars since at least 2014. Beginning in March 2014, prior to 7000 series rail cars entering service, Metrorail identified wheel migration on more than 30 legacy rail cars. Metrorail did not incorporate this hazard into the 7000 series rail car design and acceptance process. Metrorail identified wheel migration on 7000 series rail cars beginning in 2017. Later, Metrorail changed the wheel set assembly specification for 7000 series rail cars that were delivered later in the acceptance process. Metrorail did not make any changes for the rail cars built and accepted prior to the change taking effect. Metrorail is progressing studies related to track specifications and rail car vibration that are related to issues identified during this investigation, and that also relate to areas Metrorail had previously identified concerns. Metrorail's 2014 restraining rail study identified concerns related to lubrication and to the flangeway width, noted differences in the design of current rail cars compared to the original 1000 series rail cars, and recommended wayside measurements and computer modeling specific to WMATA's vehicle characteristics. Following WMSC focus on this issue, and after track inspections identified deviations in the field from Metrorail standards, Metrorail began to conduct a restraining rail study. Metrorail expects to complete this study in the coming months. With respect to railcar vibration, due to the WMSC's oversight, Metrorail began reviewing its vehicle track interaction system data from 7000 series railcars. This VTI system is installed on approximately 15% of the 7000 series railcars. WMSC oversight ensured that that Metrorail began regularly reviewing this data, which has led to track adjustments and safety improvements. Metrorail has not yet completed work related to wheels out of round that is required under CAP C0143 to address a finding from the WMSC's railcar audit issued in September of 2021. This includes assessments of damping options, investigation of frequency components, external vibration frequencies, and axle bending renaissance, and associated design changes. Due to the WMSC's oversight, Metrorail established a vehicle track working group that is intended to provide a cross-functional forum for data sharing and analysis. Metrorail is also working to procure different types of frogs for an in-service evaluation of possible changes to the type of frog used at switches. The next phase of the work involves installing different frog types for study in the Metrorail operating environment. The investigation also demonstrated deficiencies in Metrorail's safety certification of the 7000 series railcars during their design and acceptance process, which took place before the WMSC was created. Since the certification of the WMSC's oversight program, the WMSC has issued several findings that Metrorail was not following its safety certification program, and Metrorail is addressing these safety issues. CAP C0118 is scheduled to be completed this spring. Regarding railcars specifically, the WMSC regularly observes the activities of Metrorail's 8000 series railcar safety certification working group and has selected the 8000 series railcar project for in-depth review. In-depth review is a process established by the WMSC program standard for conducting more detailed oversight of Metrorail's safety certification process for certain projects. Myself, Mr. Dorenzo, and others are available for any questions. Thank you. This completes this report.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer and Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for any of the above?
Yes, Chair Hart. First off, thank you for the the in-depth presentation, but I do have a few comments from my side.
Please go ahead.
And really, these are observations, right? I mean, the whole point here is to make sure we're doing the best job we can so that WMATA can do the best job they can. And I still think this is still a new safety organization. And so this is the time to kind of make some of those adjustments. But I'm looking at this recommendation in particular. I don't have any objection to the cap itself. You know, I think trend analysis is important, especially if we ever want to move away from reactive safety to more proactive safety. But given the very fundamental nature of this accident, interference fit, its issues around the railroad world, I do have some concerns when I see, you know, one recommendation and I see 13 recommendations in a cap. And I wonder, you know, or more honestly, I'm concerned about what I would call the snowball effect, right? And that's where we try to extract too much from some of the contributing factors and maybe lose sight of some of the primary issues. And so, you know, I always look at the test of if we put this in front of somebody who was not involved in this investigation, would they be able to identify what the primary issues were, what the primary problems were, and understand what we're trying to solve? And so I would ask, you know, when we come up with these corrective action plans, really, are we asking that question? Are we looking at how they're going to be implemented? Because it's our job to make sure they're implementing them, right? And there's got to be some success metrics here. And when I look at the NTSB report and our report, right, recommendation aside, trend analysis, and it's good. I really see a few issues. One is clearly issues with procurement and the use of specifications, which is in and of itself something that I think is a problem in this industry. You know, years ago, you used to design specifications based on technical specific issues, because if I was Pennsylvania Railroad and I was buying 300 locomotives and I can't produce 300 locomotives, I'm going to go to Lima, I'm going to go to Baldwin, and I want the same locomotive with very minor modifications, but I want that class of locomotive to be produced the same way. And so I'm going to give you a specification from my engineering department. It's going to be very detailed. It's going to tell you what to press the wheels on. It's going to tell you how thick to paint it. We don't do that anymore. We've moved far away from that. And everybody now is more performance-based specs. And so you rely more on the expertise of the car builder and their engineering department to make decisions like how to press the wheels on and what press and force tonnage to use and what the interference fit should be. And so, you know, that alone sticks out and goes, where are we headed here with procurement and specifications, and how are they being used not only for this, for the 8,000 series cars? You have issues with what happened after it was discovered, which I think primarily is what the NTSB was getting at here, right? Okay, somebody had the wrong number, there was issues with the spec, but then they found it, and what did they do with that information? And I think really what our cap gets at is a reflection of that recommendation. It's really addressing, okay, how do you use information that you have to improve safety? But then you had other issues like out of tolerance issues with the track, and then the ventilation process, which I guess we could tee up to other issues not being resolved quite yet from previous recommendations. So I think that one's kind of a little bit off to the side. But I would wonder if I walk down the hall and put this report and put the recommendations in front of the chief mechanical officer or his assistant for this railroad, if they'd be able to tell what it was that we're trying to address here. So, you know, just again, my honest opinion here from looking at this, we didn't get to see this, and I applaud you for quickly getting on top of the recommendation, getting it out there. But do consider, you know, when we're writing these, what is our measure of success, right? And I would ask that to the group, right? Is it the number of caps that we issue or have closed? Is it the result of audit findings after we issue these corrective action plans, sort of what Commissioner Lobby was alluding to earlier? How do we know that these things are working? How do we know that what we're doing is being effective? Or is it future safety data? And really, in order to be successful, if our success is measured in those latter two, which I would think would be the better measures, right? Auditing or, you know, focus inspections. Are they doing what we've recommended or what everybody's identified? Safety data trending in the right way. In order to do that, we have to understand if we can implement some of the things that we've put in there. And there's an old engineering adage, you know, that there's safety and simplicity, right? And so the more complicated, the more steps and more paperwork and things that you inject into a process, the harder it is to, or the easier it is to lose sight of what you're trying to do. And so just wanted to put that out there because again, we're sort of outside the process on this, and that's for good reason, right? We don't want to inject too much into your activities. But I do look at this and say, okay, every time we issue these, especially for a big accident like this that got a lot of attention, we took the whole 7,000 series cars out of service, right? So if people are watching what happens, how do you resolve this? I do think it's important though, every time to kind of reflect on ourselves and say, what is going to be our outcome of this? Are we going to measure these recommendations? How are we going to measure success for those recommendations? And moving forward, is this, how does it affect how we write caps in the future? So again, just pure observations from my experience here. I just wanted to share with the group here, and thank you for that opportunity to do so, I'd say.
Oh, we really appreciate the input, and I want to stress, I'm not sure I'll quote you accurately, but you said, I want to make sure that you and all the commissioners feel that, our activities are your activities. You are our governance oversight. So we want to include you and hear from you and take your advice into consideration. There's a lot of things that you said, and I won't even try to respond to all of them. Although one, you had some very good observations on procurement and specification and trends in the industry, and I won't for a second tell you that we're going to fix all that for you. However, I do want to make sure to mention that lessons learned and specifications and ultimate safety certification of the 8,000 series rail car fleet has been, in front of mind for a long time for us and for Metro. And we will do everything that we can to provide careful oversight of Metro's procurement process and safety certification. And we've mentioned a couple of times during this meeting that we select projects for in-depth review. I don't remember if we've mentioned it, but of course, the 8,000 series project itself is selected for in-depth review. So that will provide significant opportunities to ensure that lessons are adequately learned and that safety certification activities are carried out properly, as I know Metro intends to do so for that fleet. One of the things I was kind of thinking about in reaction to some of the things that you said, well, I guess first I'd point out that one of the reasons that the State Safety Oversight Program is required to assess any NTSB recommendations to determine if caps are necessary is because we sit much, much closer to the RTA than the NTSB ever could. And so while the NTSB may target a recommendation in a broader or more open-ended way, where there are opportunities because of the SSOA's specialized knowledge and in-depth oversight activities to focus that recommendation appropriately, the opportunity exists. And as you've observed, we took it in this case, and it was a matter of some significant internal conversations as we debated the correct action and the right way to go. Whenever we issue a cap, it's our tradition, it's our precedent to provide Metro a list of minimum corrective actions, things that we believe, from the get-go have got to be part of the corrective action plan, have got to be part of the actionable items in order for Metro to propose an acceptable cap. And we felt very strongly in this case that there were some very specific important notes that needed to be sung in producing this cap. And one of the debate points we had is, do we include them in this order, or do we wait quietly for Metro to propose its cap and then tell them what things they missed? And we decided to err on the side of providing them a range of specifics that we wanted to see them give serious consideration to in proposing the cap from the get-go, rather than being in any way coy about that information. But there's some reasons behind which we thought it was important that Metro's cap that they will ultimately propose hits the notes that we listed in the order that we issued. And I think Ms. Samara Singha may be better prepared than I am to kind of provide a little bit of a framework that knits those items back to where we saw the need for actually ordering their implementation.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer and Commissioner Rouse. So going back to the investigation report itself, the NTSB reached back 15 years to touch on two other significant investigations that they had conducted on fatal accidents that had happened, the Fort Totten accident from 2009 and the Lafont accident from 2015. And they touched on these to create a pattern to demonstrate that Metro Rail in the past have had accidents that have occurred as a result of the lack of internal communication, the inability to recognize hazards, and to implement corrective actions as a result of those hazards that exist. And they touched on both the Fort Totten incident, where they underscored again that engineers and others within automatic train control and signals departments were aware of technical issues and field issues that were being considered and known, and did not follow through on actions. They touched on the 2015 event investigation and touching on the radio system to say that many previous instances had demonstrated that the radio system was not meeting the performance requirements that Metro Rail had, but those safety event investigations were not used to inform their judgment on making changes to the radio system before the Lafont accident took place. And in this instance as well, they underscore the fact that there were individuals and individual units within car engineering and car maintenance that knew of this information, but either due to the lack of understanding of how to recognize hazards, or the inability or the mechanisms that were not available at the time to communicate that across various departments to collaborate on the issue, that this had resulted in this event manifesting as a derailment. They also touched on the fact that while management improvements had been accomplished over the last 15 years, that significant management deficiencies still exist. They touched on the fact that safety certification of the 7000 series rail cars were not upgraded or captured the information that they were getting from the field in 2014 about these deviations of back-to-back wheel measurements that they were seeing out in the field. So we took this information and essentially created these minimum corrective actions that are seen in the order. Another aspect is in the NTSB investigation, what is being underscored is the advancements or improvements that they've accomplished since the derailment in 2021 is fragile, and that it could regress. So that was a signal to us for us to take strong action on requiring what really would be the structural supports in order to bolster the efforts they had undertaken since 2021 to try to negate the fragility of the progress they had made. So those are the reasons why that led to what you see in that order.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. It goes back to the earlier question though, too. I think it's important as we go forward with these is to make sure, because, the list is just going to grow as we have more issues. There's always things that we're going to find. But, how do we manage it? How do we make sure we're getting success that we want? How to collectively, the two organizations, the whole goal here is to continue to progress in the right direction. How do we know that we're going in that direction? I think is core to me as we move forward through these things, right? Are the recommendations measurable? Is it truly, if we're sitting on the other side, do we know what to do with it, right? I think you mentioned a big point, and that was one of my big takeaways here is the fragility of some of these improvements. What's the point of making the improvement if if everybody's gonna forget about how to do it, ignore the process and procedure? We see it all the time. And that to me is the bigger issue with any safety recommendation, is how do you not only correct the problem, but maintain it in the long term, right? So that's what I always look at when I pick apart these issues and say, okay, not only we've got a root cause and some contributing factors, and rather than get too far out of focus, how do we make sure we fix the problem, but it stays fixed, right? So I appreciate you letting me do on my soapbox here for a little bit. I'll offer it up to anybody else's opinion here.
Happy to continue the conversation down the road with you on these topics too.
Well,
I listened to Mr. Rouse's explanation, and I'm very supportive. I understand what he's talking about. The cap itself, I guess in my view, was very detailed, and it was very had a lot of legalese in it, a lot of whereas, and essentially didn't really seem to focus on what caused this issue, and to me the issue, the wheel migration, there's a lot of causes of that, but the fact that Washington Metro didn't publicize that issue when they first discovered it, did not communicated it with the rest of the organization. I think that's important, and I think we may be talking here about trying to do trend analysis, but obviously you can't do trend analysis if nobody knows what the incident is or where the trend's coming from. So I think there's something to take away from both David and Sharmila's explanation and from Mr. Rouse, and hopefully we can find a position where we can do a better job of communicating the main issue and still get the message of what it's going to take to satisfy our cap through. But maybe plain language would help us in some ways to get to that point.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I really appreciate the comments of the experts on the panel, and I can speak from someone who's more in the financial side of the business, but have run large organizations. I thought that Mr. Quinley's report, at least for me, was very descriptive of the problem, and maybe because I'm more a visual learner sometimes. And I appreciate all of the comments from the commissioners who have a deeper experience in this business than I, but from where I sit, I thought that the report, I got it in terms of what the problems and the issues, and the graphics really helped me to dial into the issue that's in front of us. And now the fix, how do you get the fix? So as one commissioner, I really appreciate comments from the commissioners, and I appreciate Mr. Quinley's report, in particular when the technical is married with graphics, that we can have a clear vision of what the problem is and how it came about.
Appreciate that feedback. I do want to make sure that, to the extent that any commissioners are concerned about whether or not we have lost focus on the primary causes of the derailment, in my mind, some of the primary causes of the derailment, as the NTSB has grappled with, are the actual mechanism of wheel migration, which we are continuing to oversee in multiple different fronts, particularly now on the increased press tonnage and the tighter interference fit, to ensure that it meets its intended goals of successfully reducing wheel migration and wheel spread. And we're overseeing and required Metro to implement a specific engineering test for newly repressed wheels to ensure that work is done properly and ensure that it has the intended effect. One of the other causes of this was Metro knew about, or elements within Metro knew about the wheel sped program and didn't take action. And that's really one of the things that's in the heart of developing SMS and developing trend analysis techniques as the NTSB recommended, but that goes well beyond just this recommendation, is probably why one of the reasons why you saw so many different specific minimum corrective actions that we want to see in Metro as it continues to advance its SMS. That said, though, Metro Rail siloing really contributed to not communicating both internally and from the Metro Rail organization to us about the problem that Metro, certain elements within Metro were observing and had ample opportunities to communicate about and did not do so. That's a problem that has been recognized in other NTSB investigations. That being the siloing has been recognized in other NTSB investigations. It's certainly well aware as a concern. I think I can speak to say at high levels of Metro Rail leadership. And if you look back on our audit reports over our years of existence, you'll see it's something that we have addressed in a variety of different ways. So there's a lot in play here, and I just want to make sure that the commissioners are aware that we did not imagine that this one order was going to address all of the different kinds of things that we're talking about today.
Mr. Mayor, I think that's a great comment, and I want to concur with the Commissioner Bob's comments. I think that WMSC staff did an outstanding job through this whole wheel migration issue. You were right on target as far as taking cars out of service, working with Washington Metro to make sure that they did the appropriate measures and made sure that the cars that were presented for service were safe to move forward. And I think Mr. Quigley's presentation was outstanding also. It had all the elements that I was looking for. So I want to make sure that everybody understands this is not criticism of anything you guys have done in the last 2 years, in trying to address this. I think you've done an absolutely outstanding job. I just think we're grappling a little bit of where do we go from here based on everything we know, which is always the problem, isn't it? So I just wanted to make that statement that I think you guys have just done it outstanding in the way you've handled this investigation and working with Washington Metro with the 7,000 car issues and the wheel migration issues. So thank you very much for doing that.
And I would second that real quick. I don't want it to be taken as any criticism for the work that was been done in 2 years. I think it's exactly as you observed, right? Where are we going from here? Knowing that these issues compound themselves, and right, if we need to have clear focus on solving one problem before we try to solve the 17 other problems, right? And it's always a challenge trying to balance the bigger picture versus bite-sized chunks and moving on to the next issue. And so that was my broader point here is as we move forward, how do we avoid compounding it by having too much to lose focus on fixing the original problem that we found, right? So.
Chair Hart, I had a couple related questions, if it's okay.
Yes, please.
Well, first is more of a statement, and I think I had this right from the report that there were no examples of this wheel migration in other agencies that had been contacted. And I found that to be extraordinary that this issue would be limited to only WMATA. So I don't know if I read that right, but that was relatively extraordinary to me, given the number of rail cars in the country, that we would have such an issue confined only to this agency. And a couple other questions. One, Mr. Quigley, you reported on the issues with potential replacement of frogs, restraining rail studies, and vibration studies. It wasn't clear to me what the relationship between those elements and this crash was. So I was wondering if you could expand on that a little bit more. And then lastly, in the report, the elements of response and heeding customer reports of an issue that weren't acted upon by WMATA. I know those aren't reflected directly in the NTSB root cause analysis, but are those covered in other caps, or in some way, is there other work on the emergency response element? Because the crash incident is one thing, but the hazard is compounded by the speed and effectiveness of the response. So those were my questions for this item. Thank you.
Yeah, so the phone calls from the riders, that's probably going to be all covered under the emergency management audit that we did in the winter of 2022. So there are some caps where Metro needs to address, how they handle getting reports and sharing that information to, the correct individuals. I would try to take on that your other question, maybe, I don't know, John Dorenzo he might be better to share about the frog interaction and things like that type of data and vibrations. John?
Right, the frog study, they're looking at the wear on the frogs and where the wheel makes impact with the frog to see if there is a better design that they could use to keep from the wear from happening so much on the frogs. As far as the restraining rail study, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. That's what is used on curves to try to keep the wheels from climbing up on the rails if they get into a curve. And one of the things they're addressing is the distance in the restraining rail from the running rail to see if it's too close or if it's something else that's causing pressure on the backside of the wheels that would actually start to push them off the axle. That's one of the things the restraining rail study is doing.
Thanks. I just wasn't sure what the relevance was, but that explains it. And the vibration, I assume, is also a similar mechanical effect that might loosen the bond. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Meyer, I have a question for you. That's something that I'm afraid I don't understand, and I'm not exactly sure what it is that we're being asked to adopt.
What for today, we are asking you to adopt the investigation report that the NTSB prepared. Obviously, the NTSB board members have already adopted it. It is their final report, but until you as commissioners adopt a final report, it sort of technically leaves a hole in investigating all of the accidents that have occurred on our watch. So this may be a little bit on the tedious side, but we simply need to ask you to fill that hole by adopting the report as in your meeting today, as opposed to doing something like asking us to write a competing report, which we don't really see much value in.
I don't see much value in that either, but I'm not exactly sure what it means. What's the significance of us, quote, adopting the NTSB report? I'm not sure what that really means.
I think it really is essentially for the commissioners a little bit like any other staff prepared document that you would adopt and essentially make your own. I think it shows broad agreement, not necessarily with every single sentence in the report, but it shows broad agreement with the report, its findings, the direction, and I think it also shows no disagreement with the report, say that would prompt us to file a petition for reconsideration or something that staff certainly sees no call for.
Well, I'm thinking of something somewhat narrower than that, like adopting what the NTSB has recommended that we do, for example, as opposed to adopting the entire report. The reason I'm a little bit uneasy about this is because the NTSB's assignment is to look at what could be done to prevent bad things from going on without doing a cost benefit study. And that's the reason that the NTSB has historically recommended what to do, but not how to do it. So the idea is they say, here's what needs to be fixed. I don't know enough about the way you operate to be specific on how to fix it. So I'm not going to go into the how, I'm just going to go into the what. So that's what the NTSB investigation reports typically do, is talk about not exactly how to fix it, but what needs to be fixed. And I'm just wondering, what is the significance of us agreeing with them on the what needs to be fixed without getting into the how? Because our job as a regulator is to get into the how for the entity that we regulate. And I'm just trying to figure out how this fits in the scheme of things.
Sorry about that. I think that in adopting the report, if you choose to do so, that in no way limits us from being able to take the other kinds of actions that you're describing. And in fact, we gave a little bit of a flavor of them in attaching some of the other documents to the package. But there's a burden on us in our oversight role to ensure that an adequate investigation is carried out for every accident. And I would encourage you to view adopting the report today, if you choose to do so, as simply our determination, or really your determination as the commissioners, that the investigation that was conducted is adequate, and we do not need to require or conduct additional investigative activities to learn about the cause of the derailment that occurred 2 years ago.
So what is the series of 13 things that's being referred to?
That is specifically the minimum corrective actions in the order that we issued last week to require Metro to propose a cap for the safety recommendation that the NTSB issued to them in the report.
And what are we being asked to do with respect to that today?
Really nothing.
Yeah, Chair Hart, just to add some context, that is included in the package of the report you're adopting, but that is the order we issued to Metro Rail last week. So that order has already been issued.
Okay, so that's not before us in this meeting right now.
Yes, sir. It's not.
Okay, because and so that's why I was trying to figure out what does it mean for us to adopt the investigation report. But thank you, Dr. Meyer. I think that helps me understand that better. But and the reason I'm asking about the 13 items is because of the previous discussion we've had in this meeting about, is that too complicated? That's really not an issue that's before this meeting right now, then, I guess is what I'm understanding.
That's really correct. The question now really is if the commissioners believe that the investigation that's been conducted so far is adequate, we'd encourage you to adopt that report, and that will allow us to sort of close out that investigation and not require any further investigative activities. But that said, any sort of safety oversight with respect to the Metro Rail system, whether it has to do with events that occur with 7000 series cars or the progression of caps of any kind, all of that's a separate matter.
Okay, I understand that. That's very helpful. I appreciate that. Let me open this up for any further. This is a very productive questioning session, and let me not try to bring it to a close prematurely. I want to ask, are there any other commissioners who have any questions before we move on this item further? Questions, comments, suggestions, whatever.
I do have one more. I think
please.
Mr. Lorenzo had addressed, and I'm curious on the current actions. It's not related to the NTSB investigation or the recommendations, but it was mentioned that they're looking at the frogs. And I'm curious, are they looking at wheel condition as well? Because it's been a very long time since I had to do anything with turnouts and frogs. But if I remember correctly, these are not flange bearing frogs. And so yes, there's wear on the frog, but theoretically it really shouldn't have much, right? Because it's the wheel tread that should transfer that load from as it moves through the frog, and it's a manganese frog, it's hardened, all that good stuff. So it's usually wheel condition that drives wear on the frog itself. So if we're looking, and what concerns me is, we're trying to find problems, not us. I think this is something WMATA's looking at. Is that correct? Are they looking at the frog issue?
Yes, WMATA is looking at the frog issue, and I believe that's part of the frog study that that will be incorporated into that as well.
Okay, good. Yeah, I worry, that manganese frogs have been around for 100 plus years, as interference fit wheels. So, if you're looking at that, but are they looking at some of the other issues that might be key there, which to me, the bigger issue would be wheel condition, right? We know inspections and maintenance on the mechanical side is something that could always be improved. And so, yeah, you might be able to put a moving point switch in there, but now you've got another thing that could fail that you have to maintain correctly. So rather than jump 2 stages ahead, I'm hoping they're looking at some of the more fundamental issues that could be contributing things there, such as, you know, just basic condition of the wheels themselves. Are they being trued regularly enough? Are they being inspected on the right frequency, replaced in the right frequency? So you just piqued my interest when that was mentioned. So I just wanted to throw that out there because it's, you know, part of the bigger picture here.
Understood. Thank you.
So is that specific comment related to whether we agree with the NTSB's investigation report?
Not on that particular issue. That was just clarification on what they were looking at and whether or not that was driven by us or if that's a WMATA issue.
Right. Yeah, I'm just trying to get clarification on what it is that we're looking at today. What are we voting on today? That's all. That's the clarification I'm trying to figure out to make sure I understand what we're doing.
Yeah, Chair Hart, we have a mixture here. We have things that NTSB put in the report. And we have actions that WMSC has taken, and we have other actions that Washington Metro is pursuing. But I think based on Mr. Meyer's explanation, I think basically what we're voting on today is just whether or not we agree with the investigation and the general conclusions, findings, and recommendations that NTSB has provided.
And the sufficiency.
So all this other stuff is good discussion, good items for discussion, but I think the vote is just on the NTSB actions on this investigation and whether we can embrace that report as a good report of this particular accident.
So does everybody understand what Commissioner Laube just said? I think I agree with it, but I'm sorry we can't have our general counsel in on this conversation just to see again to help me understand what's the significance of us adopting the NTSB's.
Well, Chair Hart, if I could jump in here, the significance, I would think of it just like any other investigation report. It just happens, in this case, the NTSB conducted the investigation. We are authorized to adopt reports from other entities. And in this space, this report by the NTSB just fulfills that obligation for us. And so we have attached a cover sheet to it, just like we would with an internal Metro Rail report.
Right.
And we are treating it the same way. You know, if we had slotted this, for example, under the safety investigations, I think you would see little difference other than it is the NTSB who prepared the report that you're voting on.
So Chair Hart, another way to look at it is do we want to adopt the NTSB report, or do we want the WMSC staff to do a complete independent report that they investigated and create? You know, that's really the choice. And after 18-month investigation, I tend to believe that the NTSB has probably covered the bases adequately that we could reasonably adopt their report rather than have staff do another complete independent report at this point.
And if I could follow up, I think Vice Chair Laube describes the choice you're facing well here.
Totally agree.
And so let me ask the question another way, because I certainly am, I'm totally biased towards thinking the NTSB did a dynamite project and had handled the issues comprehensively, adequately, thoroughly, no question about that. I'm just wondering what does it mean for us to investigate it, and I mean for us to adopt it, but in addition to that, I guess what is the relationship between the NTSB's report and the discussion we've been having this today about making this so complicated that I
don't think there's any connection between that. I think the issue really is that if the NTSB had not decided to conduct an investigation, the WMSC would have been obligated to ensure that one was conducted.
Right.
Because the NTSB came in and conducted an investigation, that doesn't free us from that obligation. If you believe that the NTSB's investigation was sufficient, then I would encourage you to vote to adopt it. And if for some reason you do not, then I would encourage you to direct us to write our own independent and I guess competing investigation report. But like Commissioner Lobby, I would suggest that there's truly not much value in that, nor is there a need for it.
I agree. And so what I'm thinking of doing at this point is to adopt the investigation, is to put that up for a vote, and then see if, now that that's been adopted, if there is anything else that we need to do because of the rest of the discussion that we've been having this afternoon. So let me do that. Are we good to go on doing it as in two steps like that?
Let me seek a little bit of clarification here. I apologize, Chair Hart. So you are proposing to vote on the report. So this would dispense of the report. And
I'm proposing to
right.
Move to adopt the NTSB's investigation report. Yes.
Okay. All right. And then additional actions beyond the scope of the report itself would be up for discussion.
Yeah. And in other words, because we've discussed some of what we discussed this afternoon, as far as I understand it, is not in the NTSB's report. So my question is that going to necessitate a separate vote on what we talked about that's not included in the report already?
I think the board would be able to take actions, but the commission as a whole, if you think of us as an entity, has taken actions by issuing the order already. Now, the board or the commission could potentially, amend an order, but the order that has been issued is separate. Just so we're clear here, it is separate from the report we're adopting today.
Okay, so I don't. Go ahead,
Chair Hart. Just to clarify here, the report that we're talking about adopting includes a recommendation to directly to us,
correct,
WMSC, that says develop and implement a program to support and monitor WMATA's use of trend analysis within its safety management system. So that's a recommendation in the NTSB report.
Right.
In response to that recommendation, we have this cap that we've issued, that's already issued with
right.
the 13 steps. And so,
that's correct.
So adopting the NTSB report means that we essentially agree with this recommendation we received, but how we satisfy that recommendation is certainly open to more discussion. So,
okay.
So I would say we adopt the report, and then maybe not maybe not today, but at some time we can discuss, whether we are appropriately addressing everything that we should as far as this investigation, because we can satisfy NTSB's recommendation, but there may be other things or other steps that the commissioners may want staff to do to make sure that we adequately address all the issues that we think we know of.
Well, I think that's a very helpful clarification. So in the wake of that clarification, I am going to ask, is there a motion to adopt the investigation report Whiskey 0256?
I move that we adopt the report.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay. Yay.
Yay.
Yay.
All opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Chair Hart, the vote is 6-0 and the motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Now, regarding that, am I understanding this correctly, that a lot of what we talked about this afternoon is not in the NTSB's report?
It's an extension of the NTSB report in that the cap is something that would help satisfy one of the NTSB's recommendations. But if I may, Chair Hart,
please.
What I would suggest is that we ask staff to review both this cap and other elements of the NTSB report and their own knowledge of the investigation, and make recommendations to see if there's other actions that WMSC should take in response to the NTSB investigation and our own knowledge of the situation at Washington Metro, and maybe come back with some recommendations for any additional actions that may be prudent. And then we can look at those and discuss and decide if we're happy with the overall response to this important accident.
So I thank you for the suggestion. I could go along with that plan. Let me just get sort of I'm not asking for a vote, but let me just understand how the other commissioners feel about pursuing that plan.
I support that plan, and that we'll have something in writing that we can take a look at.
Right.
With the light of this discussion, I would recommend the commissioners take another look at the briefing materials we supplied. The so-called cover sheet to the investigation kind of summarizes all of the elements of the investigation that we consider to be relevant and appropriate, summarizes actions that we've taken, contemplated, and if you have other direction for us with respect to that document, then I mean, not like editing the document, but other avenues you would like us to pursue in terms of safety oversight, we can definitely do that. And separately, I would also mention that because we are the recipient of an NTSB recommendation, the NTSB has asked us to respond formally to that recommendation in correspondence within 90 days of receiving it. So writing back to them and telling them how we intend to implement their recommendation is certainly on our things to do list.
And I would also offer up that maybe we're a victim of process here, right? And I bring up the issues that are my observations simply because we don't, to my knowledge, have an opportunity to weigh in on those recommendations other than this discussion, right? They were issued before this meeting. And so, it doesn't make sense that we vote on the fact that we don't believe we need an additional investigation on top of what the NTSB has provided before or after we have already issued a recommendation for a cap. Shouldn't this happen first and then there be the recommendation for the cap? I don't know. Process wise, that seems to be a little bit backwards, and that might be why we're having confusion on, what we're talking about here.
But based on the information that we've received, both from staff and from NTSB, and we do have one recommendation that we have to respond to, there's no reason why we cannot review the situation to see if there's any additional actions that we may want to take. I mean, we always have that option that we can agree with everything NTSB's done, and we could say, and there's a couple of other things we want you guys to look at. And I think that's kind of where we are. You brought up some very good suggestions, Mr. Rouse, of things to look at on some of the future testing that they're going to do to help them get their arms around this issue long term. There may be other things, but just adopting the NTSB report doesn't mean that we can't take further action to make sure that that Metro Rail is working towards a goal of a safe system. So I don't see any conflict there whatsoever.
And thank you for that, Commissioner Lobby. And that's where I was headed, that since this does come after the 13 proposals have already been sent. What I'm suggesting is that this conversation today, to the extent it's open new area that we also need to investigate, this conversation today tells me that the door is still open for that. If any of you decide you want to pursue it further, and you can let us know that, and we'll do that accordingly.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Lowry. That was very helpful. And thanks to all of the commissioners for the participation in this very productive and fruitful discussion. Thank you much. Having said that, I'm going to go on to the next item on the agenda, safety event investigations. Mr. Quigley, I understand that you have updates on ongoing investigations and 5 reports to present for our consideration today. We will hear presentations on all of the remaining reports, then consider a single motion on all of the reports. If any commissioner wishes to remove a report from the group that we will consider in a single vote, please indicate that at the end of the presentation of that report. Mr. Quigley, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Regarding ongoing investigations, we are continuing our investigations of several events that have occurred since our last meeting. We are still confirming specific details of these events, which will then allow us to progress final investigation reports. Examples of recent events under investigation include a red signal overrun in a rail yard, improper train movement, and equipment fallen from legacy rail cars that is now being checked. The red signal overrun investigation involving a roadway maintenance machine at New Carrollton Rail Yard. The investigation includes evaluation of ongoing radio system functionality problems, other communication issues, training and familiarization for the vehicle flag person. We're also investigating a derailment of a roadway maintenance machine in the pocket track near Farragut North Station. The investigation includes Metro Rail's communication and work planning practices in shutdown areas, and the visibility of the derailer that Metro Rail has at that location that caused the derailment. Related to roadway worker protection, we're investigating an event that has led to Metro Rail identifying a previous unaddressed hazard in its roadway worker protection program. A work crew was dropped off on the roadway from a train. The following train departed the station platform prior to that work crew accessing the roadway. This led to the second train operator proceeding without being briefed by the advanced mobile flagger about personnel on the roadway. So therefore, despite the radio communications between the roadway worker in charge and rail traffic controller about the train drop off, the train operator of the second train approached the personnel unexpectedly at speed. Metro Rail is developing changes to its advanced mobile flagging process to ensure that the AMF begins briefing trains immediately when a crew boards a train for a roadway drop-off. This will provide the necessary speed limitations to train operators who may pass roadway workers. Moving to the next investigation report you are considering today, investigation Whiskey 0251 relates to a collision at Metro Center Station on May 21st, 2023. An operator was moving an out-of-service Silver Line train through the station. As the system prepared to open for the day, the train struck a person who had fallen onto the roadway. A video shows the person entered the station while the station was closed, wandered through the station appearing unsteady on their feet, then later fell to the roadway. The train operator attempted to stop before striking the person. They properly reported the emergency after the collision, and the injured person was removed from the roadway and was taken to the hospital. Metro Rail repaired the damage to the rail car from that event. That completes my report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions from any commissioners for Mr. Quigley? Okay, hearing none. Thank you. Ms. Keyrose, would you please present the next three reports?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0252, 0253, and 0255 relate to evacuations for life safety reasons. These are classified as accident level events by federal regulation, requiring investigation. Investigation Whiskey 0252 relates to an evacuation of a Yellow Line train in Ronald Reagan National Airport Station on September 3rd, 2023. A rider reported that they saw someone throw a box onto the train before the train departed. The train continued to Reagan National Airport Station, where transit police located the suspicious package and evacuated the train. Later inspection by an explosive ordnance disposal unit determined the item was not hazardous. The investigation identified some delayed communication among departments and distorted radio communications. Metro Rail is in the process of implementing corrective action plans to address WMSC findings related to incident response and failing to address trouble calls related to communication systems. Investigation Whiskey 0253 relates to an evacuation of Wheaton Station due to a shooting inside the station. Train operators reported the shooting and bystanders called 911. Metro Transit Police and Montgomery County personnel responded to the station. Service later resumed. The last evacuation report for your consideration today is Investigation Whiskey 0255. This relates to the evacuation of a Green Line train and Shaw Howard University Station on August 31st, 2023. This evacuation occurred after one rider reported to a train operator that they believed other riders had a bomb. This report was based in part on miscommunication. The station was evacuated and later reopened. Thank you. That's complete. That completes the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Key Rose. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Key Rose?
Chair Hart, I had one question about the Wheaton Station event.
Yes, please.
The report mentioned that the train operator was dispatched to do a track inspection southbound to Forest Glen. Given that the event was a gun violence event and the perpetrators appeared to head down that tunnel, I was wondering whether it's appropriate for a train operator to conduct that kind of investigation, or if in some other way law enforcement should have been involved in that. I don't know all of the extent. I'm just going based on what I read in the report.
Those type of track inspections are usually, done because at the request of transit.
Say that again. I didn't understand that answer.
Yeah.
Sorry. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, he said at the request of train, at the request of the police department. So they usually would board the train with the train operator. And that's the best way to do the track inspection, for the police to do it from the train.
Okay, it wasn't clear that the police were part of that from the report. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for the question. Okay, are there any further questions from the commissioners regarding those three reports? Thank you, Ms. Key Rose. Now, Mr. Quigley, would you present the last report?
Sir, thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0254 relates to a collision at Rhode Island Avenue Brentwood Station on August 23rd, 2023. This was a result of a deliberate act by a rider who was struck by the train as the train entered the station. The train operator properly reported the emergency. Another person in the station called 911. The station was closed in accordance with Metro Rail procedures. Metro Rail Transit Police Department personnel experienced radio communication challenges during the response. It is positive that Metro Rail personnel identified this after the event as an area for improvement. Metro Rail is implementing a CAP to address deficiencies in responding to and identifying communications system problems. Thank you. That completes investigation report presentations.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley, but I'm not exactly sure I understand what happened there. It was a collision between a train and what?
Individual that intentionally placed themselves in front of the train.
Okay, that makes more sense. I understand that now. All right. Any further questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Quigley?
Couple of questions for Mr. Quigley. Mr. Quigley, it says Red Line Train 127 struck a rider. Why are they calling him a rider? I've seen customer before. Did this guy get off another train and jump in front of the train or what?
No, that's probably a mistake on my part saying rider. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. I just wanted to know their status. And it says here during the event, MTPD personnel experienced radio communication challenges with the mission assurance coordinator at the Rock. Is this another dead area or something? I know that we've spent a lot of time talking about problems with radio communications and dead areas in the system.
I don't think it's one of the hot spots that they've identified as having radio issues. They had just encountered these during the event.
So no additional information on why they had radio issues?
No, they were just having a difficult getting through to transit that is in the RIC or MIC as they call it now, and the MAC.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Quigley.
Mr. Quigley, back to Commissioner Lobby's former question about being a rider. Was this person ever on the train, or is it a more accurate description to say trespasser?
Trespasser is what I should have used. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Are there any questions, any further questions from any of the commissioners? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt the 5 investigation reports that have just been presented? Whiskey 0251, 0252, 0253, 0254, and 0255.
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay. Yay.
Yay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Chair Hart, the vote is 5-0 and the motion carries. Commissioner Farrar Dyke had to drop off for a prior engagement, but her previous votes are noted and her absence now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. I will now provide an opportunity for any deliberation by the commissioners related to the follow-up information that was requested in the last meeting regarding investigation whiskey 0248. Staff requested from Metro Rail the relevant policies, any additional related documentation, and the records related to the supervisor's rail transportation performance review related to this event. Staff provided this information to the commissioners for review. I would now open this up to the commissioners for any questions to WMSC staff or any other discussion.
Chair Hart, I had the opportunity to review the materials that were provided in response to the request, and a number of the events here seemed more significant than they appeared to me in the initial reports that we received. The supervisor appeared to be involved in some sort of unpermitted activity and violated some procedures, it appears, in accessing the operator cab. And the other element of the report that I didn't appreciate was the hazard to the public in assisting that supervisor when they fell into the roadway. Just the general circumstances seemed quite severe in terms of the lapses in judgment and the safety implications of the actions here. I was hoping that in the response from Metro Rail that we would have some information about how they determined the appropriate level of action and the decision that this individual could remain in a safety sensitive role based on the lack of judgment evidenced in the report. So I'm still not clear that it's appropriate for this individual to remain in that sort of supervisory safety related role. And I'm curious what other commissioners think about how our body might respond to the information that we were provided and whether this warrants additional action by the Safety Commission.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'm trying to find the reporting it now, but I do think there was a mention from staff here that they flew in on the just culture implementation by WMATA, but noted that, to have that, you also have to have honesty. And there was really two issues, probably oversimplifying. There was the actions that occurred, right, which I think we all agreed were inappropriate and what happened. But then there was the way it was reported, right? And that was well called out, I think, and I don't think they ever responded to this point on how they determined what they determined after the 5-day suspension period. Is that correct? But I agree in general here. Just questioning whether or not we have any more. Are we still waiting for information from them or what?
We are not waiting. We did send an inquiry asking for both the policies as well as the how they came to the 5-day suspension. So it's our belief from the documents that we got back that Metro Rail believes that they have responded completely to those questions. But to your point, we did raise in the letter exactly that inquiry and the role of this employee as a supervisor in making that decision, and that was not addressed specifically in the response.
So, indirectly, to kind of tie into Commissioner Conklin's point here, does that then demonstrate that this is evaluated as a reasonable response for those actions and activities, not only the actions themselves, but also reporting of it and the honesty, clearness? I don't know.
Well, Commissioner Rouse, I think reasonableness is in the eyes of the beholder, and I don't consider a 5-day suspension a reasonable response for a individual who's a supervisor that purposely ignored several rules, put himself in danger by exiting a train through the indoor, falling, and injuring himself, having other Metro customers assist him on the roadway, and then lying about the whole situation, because I believe that his statement said that he fell off the platform when that was not true. He was exiting the operating cabin and fell on the roadway. And at least from my perspective, someone who has basically, not followed the procedures and then lied about an accident is not that trustworthy, and being put in a safety critical position as a supervisor of operators, I'm not sure if that's appropriate for him to continue in that role. Now, I understand, and maybe Ms. Silva can give us some information. I understand that we have the ability to affect some of these decisions through our authority. Is that correct?
That's correct. So Commissioner Rouse, to go back to your question that I don't think I fully answered. If we are not satisfied with the answers that we've gotten so far, and as I mentioned, there's a few that they didn't respond to, we certainly can seek more information. I didn't want to leave you, the commissioners, with the impression that we're done with seeking information if there is the necessity or the desire to get some more. But Commissioner Lobby, to your point, that's correct, that under the compact, it's also then reiterated in the bylaws that the commissioners have the authority to direct WMATA to suspend or disqualify from performing in any safety sensitive position an individual who who is alleged to, can't read anymore. Let me start that again. Suspend or disqualify from performing in any safety sensitive position an individual who is alleged to or who has violated safety rules, regulations, policies, or laws. So there certainly are actions that the commission can take if they would choose to do that specific to this individual.
Well, that's good to know, but for an organization like Washington Metro that basically is trying to support a safety culture, I'm glad that we have the authority, but it is really the responsibility of Washington Metro to handle these situations appropriately. Even though they have a just safety culture, I think when trust is lost in someone that has a position of responsibility, it's up to the management of Washington Metro to address that issue sufficiently. And as far as I'm concerned, 5-day suspension for somebody that's involved in an accident, lies about it, and has these responsibilities is really not appropriate. And I know that we have the authority, but I'm hesitant to use it short of Washington Metro taking their own action. It's not our role to do Washington Metro's job for them. So I would welcome any suggestions on what we do from here to try to get Washington Metro to at least justify the decisions that they made.
So again, I'm happy to utilize some of the unanswered questions from the inquiry that we made earlier to follow up and ask those specific questions, and to seek the justification or the reasoning behind the suspension, and to remind them of the statements that we particularly hear more and more now about the development of the just culture. And in my opinion, this also plays into the SMS process too. You have to have honesty and information flowing for both of those programs to be successful. So we certainly can highlight both of those and ask that additional information, and then relay that the commissioners are considering what would be the appropriate next steps if Metro does not take steps that they think are appropriate.
I think that this is an important issue, and I agree with your approach. This is not the first time we've seen this. We've had several accidents and incidents where people of responsibility have not been forwarded as far as providing accurate information. I remember we had one with an advanced flagger who was not in position but lied about his position or his location and caused a near miss in a tunnel. I think this is an important issue, and I think that we need to go back to Washington Metro and re-emphasize that. We do have the authority to do something about this, but Washington Metro needs to take care of their organization and do the right thing here. So I would suggest we go back and talk to them some more and see if they have a justification for how they handled this particular incident. But I don't think under any circumstances a 5-day suspension is appropriate for really the magnitude of the violation.
So thank you for
with Commissioner Lowby. I think it's important that we highlight, to Metro Rail Management, that we see this as a very serious situation, and we obviously don't have all of the information about the employees' overall work performance and circumstances. We have a very limited set of information. They have a much broader set of information. And I think it's appropriate for us to refer this back to them with our concern about this person remaining in a safety sensitive role, which is as I understand it, our only authority is related to a safety sensitive role, not the person's employment generally. And see if there's other information that comes to light that justifies this action, or whether additional action might be considered by Metro Rail Management. But I also would hesitate for us to step in and substitute our judgment for Metro Rail Management's judgment without the full set of information that they've had available to make the decision they made.
Yeah, I would concur with that. And you said it much more eloquently than my original inquiry on the matter. I think my question was this the final answer for Wilmot? Because it doesn't appear to be, right? Or they were, is there some reason they didn't take other actions? Is there more to the story here that we don't understand? Because I agree. I mean, I think there's a ultimate step that we can take, right? And you've made that clear. And I think all of us agree that we want to use that judiciously, if at all. But from the response we received, I don't think they answered really the question that we asked. And to everybody's point here that's been made so far, and I think everybody would agree, this really sets the tone for some of the fundamental issues that we've been seeing over the years in terms of, particularly from boots on the ground perspective, of responsibility and adhering to that responsibility. No less in a position of supervisor position, especially in this is going to be, important in the way that they respond. And yes, we understand that, they're working on culture and there's a two-way street there. You have to be reasonable, right? But I agree, 5-day for the evidence that we see in front of us, it does not seem appropriate. And so maybe we're missing something here. Maybe there's some other things that we don't know about, but justify the actions that they've taken so far. But so far, from what we've seen to this point, why are we continuing to allow the same issues to occur rather than taking stronger actions to address some of the fundamental issues that have been around for a while?
Thank you. So Chair Hart, unless you want to, anyone else raises any other concerns, we're happy to take this direction back, and we will proceed with communicating with Metro Rail again.
Well, let me suggest a variation on the theme, and thank you for all those comments. Those are very helpful, but let me suggest a variation on the theme, and that is when we request more information, do it with the specific, let them know specifically that we're doing it with the intent of determining whether this is an occasion where we need to ask this person not be permitted in a safety sensitive position, because I don't want it to just be a general information, follow-up information request. I wanted to have more specificity to it in the sense that this is done with the intent of determining whether this is an appropriate occasion for requiring Metro to remove this person from safety sensitive positions.
Understood.
Any other questions or comments from the commissioners on this issue? Okay, so we don't need a vote on any of that, I'm assuming. So the staff knows what to do next. So any thoughts before I move on to the next resolutions?
Yeah, just to follow up, Chair Hart, there is no vote required.
Right, okay, thank you. Okay, We don't have any resolutions or actions on our agenda today, so unless there's any other business, is there any other business that the commission would like to address? All right, hearing none, that completes our meeting for today. As a reminder, you can always report any concerns through our website, wmsc.gov, through our social media channels, or by email. Before we go, I would like to thank Dr. Meyer, Ms. Marasinga, and their team for their preparations for this remote meeting. I would also like to thank the commissioners for their extensive and thorough and comprehensive engagement in the process, as you saw at this meeting. And I would like to thank the members of the public for attending. We look forward to seeing you again at our next public meeting on March 5th, 2024. Hearing no further business, this meeting is adjourned.